And this is the answer to our question here. Because what the scientists discovered is that their knowledge, the scientist's consciousness, was affecting the particle in the experiment. The fact that the scientists knew that there were different openings affected the way the particle works. Does that make sense? Are you okay with that? Here's why that's important. It's because they are showing that their consciousnness is affecting our physical world, and they were showing it in 1909. The observer changed the particles of our world. The observer changed the particles. John Wheeler, Princeton University, made this statement. He said, we had this old idea that there is a universe out there, and that here is man, the observer, safely protected from the universe by a 6-inch slab of plate glass, as he calls it. This is John Wheeler saying this. He says, now, however, we learn that to even observe an electron, we have to shatter that plate glass. We have to shatter the plate glass. So the old word observer simply has to be crossed off the books. There are no observers. The scientist in the room affected the particles. There are no observers. You are not an observer in the universe. By being in this world, you are having an effect on this world all the time. John Wheeler says we must cross the word observer off the books and put in the new word participator. Participator. We are all participating in what is happening. This is John Wheeler. Now, that was in 1909. This experiment was repeated again in 1998 in Israel. At the Weizmann Institute of Science in Israel, look at what happened. They repeated the experiment. They got the same results. But look at this. They found something even more interesting. They found the experiment revealed that the more the observers watched the particles, the greater the effect. The scientists in 1998 discovered that the more we watch our physical world, the greater the effect we're having on our world, just by being present in the world. Well, Einstein said that this is the step that made him crazy. Einstein did not like this idea. Einstein did not like the idea that we affect our world. He said, this is what he called spooky science, was the word he used. Einstein called it spooky science. He said, I like to think that a particle must have a separate reality independent of the measurements. In other words, Einstein said, I like to think the moon is there even if I'm not looking at it. Einstein is saying he likes to believe that we are not affecting the universe so much. But this is the big problem that he had in physics. The Buddhist traditions tell us the same thing. In the Mahayana Buddhist tradition, this is a quote from the text, it says the same thing. That reality exists only where the mind creates a focus. Reality exists only where the mind creates the focus. Well, this is interesting. Because if our reality exists only where our mind creates a focus, the question is, what are we focused on today? So let me ask you, since 9/11 happened, September 11th, 2001, what has been the focus of so much of the world? One word. What is that word? Fear. Fear. The point is this, that through our media, we are being conditioned to fear. We're given many things to be afraid of. The environment is changing. New viruses, new diseases are happening. They say there are many bad people in the world, that the weather patterns are changing, and that very bad things can happen in our world. If our focus is what creates the world around us, And this is where our focus is. What kind of world are we creating? But we can change this. You can change it very, very quickly. Right now, the ancient traditions say that you and I are living an important moment in history where we are choosing either war or peace for our future. And this is why a day like this is so important, because we're learning the language of our heart to make that choice. The language of our heart to make that choice. So we ask the question, who are we? We are reality makers. We are all reality makers. But the key is that we can make only what we believe in our hearts. We can make only what we believe. So all of this is leading to new science and a new spirituality that's coming together based on our beliefs. And it's happening right now. It's a very exciting time in the world of science. So the question, if the world is based in our beliefs, then the question is, what do you believe about yourself? What do you believe about your world? What I'd like to do is share with you 3 experiments that give you a reason to change your beliefs about who you are. 3 experiments, scientific experiments that tell us beyond any doubt that our inner experience of belief changes our outer world. And I'll do them very quickly. These are 3 very fast experiments. The first experiment, number 1, was performed in Geneva, Switzerland, University of Geneva, July 25th, 1997. It was reported to over 3,400 journalists, educators, scientists, engineers in more than 40 countries. Very, very famous experiment. What did they do? They took a particle of light, a photon, 1 photon, and they wanted 2 identical photons. So they took 1 particle and cut it into 2. So now you have photon 1, photon 2. They put them into a special machine that could take the photons and separate them by 14 miles. 7 miles in one direction, 7 miles in the other direction. And once they were separate, they could begin the experiments. So here are the 2 photons. We're going to shoot them 14 miles apart. Here they go. Boom. Okay, now this particle is 14 miles from this particle. And what they found is this. Whatever they do to 1 particle here, the other particle acts like it is still connected, even though it's 14 miles apart. The particle acts like it's still connected, even though it's 14 miles apart. And the question that they're asking is why? If you take 2 particles and you separate them, why do they act like they are still connected? This is important for you and for me, because the phenomenon is called entanglement. Whoops. It's called entanglement. So that is the first experiment. The experiment, and all I'm asking that you remember from this experiment is simply this. Once particles are physically separated, even though they are no longer together physically, the energy is still connected. Does that make sense? Are you okay with that? Okay, here's why this is important. This is why this is a very important experiment. Because scientists tell us if we could go back in time to the beginning of our entire universe, there was a time when everything was connected. That the universe today is many light years in diameter. But if you could take every one of those little particles of matter in the entire universe and bring them all back together, There's a time when everything was connected. These arrows, this is from the Hubble Space Telescope. It's believed to be the very center of the universe. The time that scientists call the Big Bang, when everything began. If we could go back to that time, if we could go back to the Big Bang, what would the universe look like? A long, long time ago, far, far away. What would the universe look like? Here, we'll see that again. A long time ago, far away. What would the universe look like? Right, and someone is saying it looks like a little ball. Right here. Can you see this right here? If you could go a long time ago, scientists tell us that the universe, the entire universe, if you could bring all of the matter together and take all the empty space out, that the entire universe would be about the size of a single green pea, and everything is connected. Now, the scientists tell us that at this time, everything was very compressed, and that the universe, the temperature, was about 18 billion million degrees Fahrenheit. And I said, come on, scientists, how do you know that for sure? And they said, okay, we don't know that for sure, but it was hot. It was really, really hot. Okay? So we know a long time ago the universe was hot. And then it began to expand. It began to expand and continues to expand today. Here's the point. The point is, the experiment showed that once a particle is physically connected and then physically separated, the energy is still connected. That was the experiment. Scientists are now telling us the universe was once physically connected and is now separate, but energy is still connected. And that is the reason why you and me and everything is still connected. Does that make sense to you? Does that help to make sense? It makes sense to me. As a scientist, I need to understand this. The instant everything was connected, this is called the Big Bang singularity, is the term for this. So the question is, are we still connected? The answer is, you bet we are. We are very, very connected. That was the first experiment.